Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the IELTS Prep Podcast, where we help you get ready for the IELTS speaking test, one topic at a time. I'm the teacher at Bright Sun English, and today we're diving into a very common topic that often comes up in IELTS interviews: hobbies and free time. Now, whether you're someone who loves to read, enjoys photography, or spends weekends hiking, this episode will help you prepare to talk about your hobbies in a way that will impress your IELTS examiner. So, let's take our time and get started. First, let's briefly go over the format of the IELTS speaking test. It's divided into 3 parts. In part 1, the examiner will ask you general questions about yourself, your daily life, or your interests. One of the most common topics here is hobbies and how you spend your free time. You'll need to give answers that are a bit longer than just yes or no. The goal is to show that you can express yourself clearly and naturally in English. So today, I'm going to walk you through some useful vocabulary, a few sample questions, and tips on how to structure your answers when talking about your hobbies. Ready? Let's go through it step by step. Let's start with a quick warm-up. I'll ask you a few simple questions about hobbies, and I want you to think carefully about how you would answer them. Remember, the goal here is to answer in full sentences. Take your time. Don't rush. Here are the questions. 1. What do you like to do in your free time? 2. Do you think people today have more or less free time than they did in the past? 3. Is there a hobby you've always wanted to try? Now, think about your responses. Here's an example of a good answer. I enjoy reading in my free time because it helps me relax and escape from my busy day. Notice how I didn't just say, I like reading. I added a reason for why I enjoy it. This is the kind of detail you want to include in your answers to make them richer and more engaging. Now, let's move on to some useful vocabulary that will help you talk about hobbies and free time in a more advanced way. Here are a few categories of hobbies you can mention. Creative hobbies, things like painting, photography, or writing. Outdoor activities, things like hiking, cycling, or camping. Group activities, sports like soccer or attending a yoga class. Solo activities, things like reading, playing video games, or cooking. For example, you might say, I've recently taken up photography. I love capturing moments, and it's a great way to express creativity. Now it's your turn. Take a few moments to think about your hobbies. How would you describe them using some of this vocabulary? Let's move on to some real IELTS questions. I'm going to ask you a few questions that could come up in the IELTS speaking test. Think about how you would answer. Take your time. I'll give you a sample response afterward. What hobbies do you have? Here's an example answer. One of my hobbies is cooking. I've been into it for about 5 years now, and I find it really satisfying to create new dishes and experiment with different ingredients. Next question. How did you become interested in this hobby? You could answer, I got interested in cooking when I started living on my own. At first, I was just cooking to survive, but over time, I realized I actually enjoyed trying out new recipes and making meals for friends. And finally, do you think your hobbies will change in the future? A good response might be, I think my hobbies might change. Right now, I'm really into photography, but I'd like to try something new, like learning a musical instrument in the future. Notice how in each of these answers, I'm giving more than just a one-word response. I'm adding detail and explaining my thoughts. That's what the examiners are looking for, answers that go beyond the basics. Now, let's do a fluency challenge. In part 2 of the IELTS speaking test, you'll need to talk for about 1 to 2 minutes on a given topic. Here's a practice prompt for you to try. Describe a hobby you enjoy. You should say what the hobby is, how long you've been doing it, why you enjoy it, and if you'd recommend it to others. Take a moment to think about your answer. You can pause the podcast if you need to. When you're ready, start speaking to yourself or record it. Try to keep talking for a full minute. Don't rush. Just focus on being clear and fluent. Here's how I might answer. I really enjoy photography. I've been into it for about 3 years now. What I love most is the creativity, playing with different lighting and angles to capture something unique. It's also a great way to relax and explore new places. I'd definitely recommend it to others, especially if they want a hobby that combines art and adventure. Now it's your turn. How did you do? Keep practicing these monologues. It's one of the best ways to build fluency and confidence. That's it for today's lesson on talking about hobbies and free time in the IELTS speaking test. Remember, the key is to be as descriptive as possible and to use a variety of vocabulary. Practice talking about your hobbies in detail and work on expanding your answers to show off your English skills. Before we finish, here's a quick challenge for you. Record yourself answering these 3 questions. 1. What do you like to do in your free time? 2. Why do you think people enjoy having hobbies? 3. Would you like to try any new hobbies in the future? Send me your recordings and I'll be happy to give you some feedback. Thanks so much for tuning in to the IELTS Prep Podcast.